Good morning, and we are live. Welcome, one and all. We are starting our Sunday session, and this is a yoga and community for the Peace Love Movement music group. And today we're going to look at uncovering the root cause. And this is in the Recipes for Enlightenment series. And so in this series, we're looking for how each of us has a recipe for how we can connect to ourselves. And good morning. And we're all looking for a way that we can connect with ourselves when we get out of sorts, and it just as a regular practice. So when I say recipes for enlightenment, each person has a natural inclination that for them rings a bell. That's why often you would see the beginning of a Dharma talk or a yoga practice, someone would ring a bell or hit a singing bowl, excuse me, anything to bring to start in the present moment. And because each of us has a different orientation about the way we see things and how we feel, we all have a different way of making that happen. Um, so, as we, when I say uncovering the root cause, in yoga, the term root cause is always the root cause of our. What's the root cause of our suffering? And it's taking the unreal for the real, and taking the real for the unreal, getting things back outwards, so to speak. So we see things from through our, in a sense, through our. We see mostly what we believe, and not what is really the source and what's fundamental to everything. What gives life to believe. Now this happens. Excuse me. This happens at a very starts at a very early age, like when we're born, before we're born. We come into this world into a set way of doing things. Now, say if you were born now, that all of a sudden you'd be born into a world where there's already high-tech computers, etc., etc., etc. When I was born 66 years ago, it was not like that. So, how I personally came into all of this is different than a lot of you, and each to their own kind of age group. For me, technology is a bit tricky. For example, I got a smartphone not even 2 years ago, and I am certainly still and as a way of connecting to people. For me, it's always been personal. So you can imagine, up until 2 years ago, I was a smartphone virgin, and now I've been down the rabbit hole. Well, it's been interesting. So, uncovering the root cause, when we think of that in terms of yoga and community is it. Part of this is reclaiming our attention. Like the first session we do is reclaiming our attention, because that's something you actually do all the time. This reclaiming of our attention, or returning to our own center, is what we call sadhana. That's the Eastern term or Sanskrit term, sadhana, or spiritual practice. Spiritual practice just means returning to yourself. You're reclaiming your attention, or withdrawing your senses from the world, outside world, and focusing it on your heart center or on the inside. That action, that mental exercise, we call spiritual practice. It's different in many different cultures. And in yoga practice, you often start by you're putting your hands together, and you can feel the reason for that is because our bodies are made of opposites. Our electricity that runs through our body is made of opposite, and when we bring those two opposites together, we concentrate our energy or our power into one place, and we put it at the heart center. And in yoga, typically, you see this, and in the East and in the Eastern countries, this calling Ying, or when you say namaste, this is bringing your two polarities together and acknowledging this in another person, another being, and seeing them from that place. It's like, I acknowledge you, I see you are another me. And so it's like, this is the work to do. This is the thing that is needed now in the world more than ever, is to pull our energy to the center and acknowledge the validity of each person, each being, animal and creature, that we share this world with. So our community is not just people. Our community is our environment. Our community is the creatures that surround us, the trees, the plants, the elements. All of this is in our field. And what we're doing in yoga and community is the practice of recognizing our unity, our commonality, our common unity with all beings. And when we do that, that recognition, that withdrawing the mind from the attention of the world, reclaiming our attention and pulling it back to center, if we look through the lens of us, of the community, through the eye, the third eye, or the us eye of the community, what we see is how all things are connected. Now, it all sounds good in words, and it's all doable. It does require a bit of an effort, because as you do it, just as like if you're a musician, the more you play, the better you get. The more you're able to tune in more quickly. So the more you do it, the more you do it. It just accumulates, it snowballs. So as you become in the habit, because the mind is habitual, we well, I'm a testimony to that. The mind is habitual, so we're making use of the proclivity of the mind to have a pattern. And what we're doing is adjusting the pattern and reclaiming how it's used. Okay? So we are taking the power away from others, the world, and saying, this is what I'm doing with my precious attention. Your attention is your most valuable asset, because it's the tip of your paintbrush. It's your where you plug in to the world. It's how you light things up. For example, your attention, whatever you put it on, lights it up. If you give your full attention to your partner, or to your pet, or to whatever, you notice, wow, our cats, for example, if they're just sitting there and I start giving my attention, they're all up about it, and so we're the same way. If we give our attention, and that amounts to often simply listening deeply. And part of the reason I'm doing these talks or whatever is because that's my practice, is to try to do that. is I can improve my listening skills. That's honest. That if in order, and the main reason being is if I can listen and hear another, then I can be empathetic. Again, the more you do it, the more you listen to the true sense of self, then as that listening deepens, you begin to hear your own inner voice, that still small voice within us. And what we're doing right now, as a group of people listening, we are using that inner knowledge to connect together and listen collectively to our inner voice. We have a collective inner voice that is the sustainable one, that's actually guiding the planet on the most profound and subtle level. In order to hear that voice, the mind needs to be calm. We need to be able to sit in the center of a storm, into that calm place, and then we can witness the cause and stay. It's like the image of Jesus walking on a stormy sea. Now that may just be metaphorical, but it's always conjured an image of me to me is that in the midst of the emotional storm that goes on, that we can walk above those emotions and still acknowledge that they exist, they're powerful, but if we can be calm, then we can walk steadily on our path. And as we learn to do that, of course, the natural inclination is what we'd like to help others be able to do the same so that we can walk together on this. As I have said before, we are now in the world in a state of becoming. Things are not fixed. Things are being shaken up. Things are being moved around. And it's created an emotional climate that is actually affecting the climate in the world. And so it behooves all of us to learn this practice, learn this process of withdrawing the mind and reclaiming our attention and focusing it. So I'll return to that a lot. It's like going on the trail, take a drink of water, okay? See where your position is. Now, again, uncovering the root cause. This is our journey today. The root cause is ignorance, like I said. And ignorance meaning taking the unreal for the real. Now, you can look in the world today and you can go, now that's going on pretty good. That's happening. So, as a community, like the music movement, love, peace community, the key thing is to hold in your heart, in your inner space, all the people that you know in this community and expand it out. Because this is what we're not trying to do anything political here. We're not trying to make any the movement, the peace movement is to, on a grassroots level, person to person, conversation to conversation, to acknowledge each other like this, acknowledge with respect the validity of each person, and support each other in this journey. So as we are in a state of becoming, if we know we have company in this journey, it makes it a little smoother. It's not always easy. It's not supposed to be. We are being guided. We're being guided right now through a very interesting time in the story. I'm not going to call it history anymore because in the story, we are entering into the time of the mystery. Mystery being the more feminine aspect of who we are as humans. We're entering a time where the feminine in all of us is rising up. It's rising up and creating awareness, simultaneously creating confusion. Does that sound familiar? The confusion lies in that as a race of people, as cultures, we've identified and made the unreal our real. We've made the unsustainable sustainable, and we've lived with it for a certain period of time. Now, because of this rise of this feminine energy, the rise of the goddess, the god us in us, with that coming up, what it's doing is shaking things up, but it's also revealing what doesn't work. So it's positive in effect for those on the trajectory of unity and peace, and it's negative in the sense to the flip side. In other words, if it's revealing everything. In the yoga tradition, the when this happens to an individual, we'll say that Kundalini is rising. The Kundalini, if you've not heard of it, it means Kundalini means coil, and often to refer to as a goddess. And or like in the Hindu pantheon, there's gods and goddesses. There's thousands, literally. But it's a way when you give something deity connotation. What we're really doing is you're respecting these mysterious powers that are in the universe that we really can't get a hold of. There's a god of thunder and lightning, there's a god of fire, all these elemental powers and mysterious things. So the Kundalini, the goddess Kundalini, say, is rests at the base of the sleeps at the base of the spine. Now this is in yoga tradition. So the goddess Kundalini sleeps at the base of the spine, and when she's awakened, rises up through the chakras to pierces the third eye, which is in here, and then out the top of the head. That sounds all very nice and everything, but what does it mean? And my start in yoga when I was 19 was with Kundalini Yoga. I became a Kundalini Yoga teacher, and I am still unfathoming the mysteries of Kundalini, of course, because initially you try to get a hold of, like, well, what is it? And you try to wrap your mind around how these things work. But the Kundalini, if you think of it, to simplify everything, is Kundalini means coil. And coil is also the symbol for electricity. Okay. Now, the more voltage of electricity, the more light you get. Now, what has happened is when we're born, this Kundalini is just freely flowing, goes in and out like a child can just leave their body. You have this, there's no block, it's just. Now, as you learn, as you come into this world and you meet your parents, so to speak, you begin to get their emotional take on things. Just the way it is. You're imprinted. You begin this information begins at this birth. Now, each individual, at that point, individuality just begins to seep in. And incrementally, this Kundalini, which is going in and out, this electrical energy is just passing through and through, is incrementally it begins to fall asleep. Fall asleep in that as the parents' beliefs, the culture sets in, society, all of these things begin to lay over as if you put a picture images in front of a light you see now projected on the screen of the world. If you're born into, say, a Jewish household, for example, and the practice is you practice the Sabbath and you do these things, you learn at a very age, and you eat certain foods that go with the culture. It could be in black culture, it could be in Asian culture. So you get what I'm saying, is like each one begins to put the cultural print with emotional impact into us as a child. Now, as this happens, we become somebody, right? You become, in my case, I'll start with me. I was Danny, right? And I remember, of course, there's still a picture where at 9 days old, in front of a Christmas tree, I'm sitting. My dad got me a football. A regular football, and I don't know what he was thinking I was going to do with that football. He was hoping to have a football star. We're going to start him early. And of course, that image, as I be grew up. I'm using myself as the guinea pig here. Um, I grew up, went along. Okay, sports. That was a thing for my dad. Um, you know, and then you start you become, whatever your parents make, what your parents do. So in my case, as I went on, as you know you get away with what you can as a kid. I always grew up near the beach. I was very free to be at the beach as a child, so always comfortable in the ocean and all of that. My parents got divorced when I was around 5, and I remember the thing that was really an impacting and remembering for me is that I remember being in a garage in front of the boat in our garage and my mom and dad discussing divorce. Me not knowing what that was. I don't know, no clue. I was like 4 or 5. And at that point, I felt divided. I couldn't explain it. But shortly thereafter, I remember, because I remember before, I could freely leave my body. I could freely become absorbed in whatever I was doing, whether it was looking at grass or being in the water. I could just become absorbed, become one with that scene. And I remember the day when it started to fade, and it was shortly after that talk. And I remember starting to feel pain as an individual. Now, which is interesting, but what preceded that, even as I went along, is I started to realize that as a baby, when you're uncomfortable, you cry. And the first thing that you are given to pacify you is they basically put on your mother, you're laid on your mother's chest, and when you cry, she feeds you. And then it's like you realize instinctually, or when you're wet or uncomfortable, if you cry, something's going to happen. So we wrap our minds around that as a very little I, and that goes hungry, cry, food. Good, that works. That'll get me food. Wet, tired, cry, comfort. Good. So we learn at a very young age how to work our environment, even how to work our parents, one against the other. Uh, and we learn these things at a very young age, and it's based on, again, if we nurse from our mother, we get this nectar from her that feeds our body, and in so many different ways, and we learn that we can how to navigate in this environment. And as we do, we develop this notion of me. You start with what they call the terrible twos, and that's when this little being realizes they're somebody, and they know they can cry to get what they want, and cry and kick and do various things, and we start beginning this division from the parents with a little identity that's an amalgam of what the parents have taught it and its own unique stamp in the universe, and that it was born at this particular place, this particular time, in this particular culture with these particular parents under this sign of the times. And so this individual is different than anybody else in the world, and they begin developing their world. Now, this is why I say, what is the root cause? How do you uncover the root cause? We're going back to that time when we began layering on the images, emotions of our social and cultural values and all these things, and we start to go back and take them apart. See how our cage, our trap, our jail, whatever, was made. How we created reactions laced with emotions that were not really, it's not that they were real, but they worked for the time. So our parents doing the best that they can, and everybody has a different situation in that sense. Say if you grew up in a house that was desperate, or one, there's infinite number of conditions that could have happened. Alcoholic parents, extremely religious parents, whatever, and you find yourself. So, okay, I go back and forth a little bit. You find yourself at a certain point in your life. You resist that. You resent it. You're not going to have it. Now, again, as the 5-year-old becomes a 6-year-old, then they're going to school. Now their social interactions, and they maybe go to another family's house, and they go, oh, they're different, and you start realize there's lots of different realities going on. Not everybody's mom even knows how to cook, or the dad. My family, my dad knew how to cook. My mom, not so much, not really, but my dad did all the cooking. And then when we moved in with my grandmother, my grandma was a cook, and my dad, we camped all the time. So I was always learning to cook. So I learned to cook. I even opened a restaurant later in life, and I realized that. And in this process, I started realizing that we are given these ingredients as we go along that are our raw ingredients for our particular recipe. And what we do with that, well, that's up to us. We need some skillful means in order to construct with our raw ingredients something that's tasty, something that's nourishing, and so on and so forth. So, again, as you go along from your 5 to 10, then you get to 13 years old, around 13, maybe a little younger for girls, you have the situation where you're a teenager, neither a child totally, or you're certainly not an adult. And so what you have is a time of moving away from your parents' view, developing your own, but still bringing with you your parents' values. For example, in ninth grade, it was around 1969 for me, 68. I remember some of my friends started smoking pot, and but my dad was always telling me, "Oh, pot's very bad," and he'd seen, reefer madness and all this stuff, and so I remember our teacher, who was a pretty enlightened fellow, Mr. Mirasharo. Absolutely love this guy. He goes, he brought up the subject of marijuana, and I chimed in, it's like, marijuana's really bad for you. And he says, you're just parroting what your father says. You don't know. You've never even tried it. And I'm like, ah. He taught me so much with that one thing. I know my dad wouldn't have been pleased with that, but he taught me so much with that one thing that it's like, I don't even know. Of course, I tried very soon, and next thing you know, I'm a trier. And it opened my eyes to many things, and of course, then I was psychotropics, LSD, and peyote, etc. And they opened my eyes, to that. Oh, this world is not what I was told it was. And I'm about 16 or 17, and as the story goes, I came to yoga eventually because I would come down from a psychedelic experience, or psychologically dying and coming back, and realize, watching as my beliefs left me and watched them return. And I was going, I have to somehow figure out how to manage that, because coming back kind of sucks. when you've been in the bliss of union with the divine and the infant, and all of a sudden you're back in the world with people complaining about shit, you go, well, there's got to be a way to do this. And that's when yoga showed up for me, because I was suffering for not knowing but not knowing how to manage, or how to get into the flow, how to reclaim my attention when it got pulled from me, because none of my friends at the time knew how to support that. I didn't know anybody. And so I felt very alone in that. And this was all happening in the midst of the hippie movement. And of course, I always wanted to let my hair grow and whatever. And my dad didn't want me to let it grow. And, that was our big conflict, getting a haircut. Imagine how challenging that was. So as I got into yoga, I realized I met this. I went to college. I decided, okay, I'm finish high school, of course, and my dad really wanted me to go to college. And I'm like, okay, I'll go. I started off at college. He even got me a van so I could drive to college, and I went for a few months, and I thought, this is just blown up high school. At the time, teachers smoked in the class. People smoked in the classroom in the college, and and but all I could see in the whole thing was like, this is just more of the same. A little shinier, maybe a little more freedom, but still you're under the rule. And after 3 months of that, I met this guy, and he goes, hey man, you ever been to Oaxaca? And I'm like, Oaxaca? No. All of a sudden, we're talking about some mysterious place in Mexico, and I decided I'm going. Quitting school. And he goes, oh, are you a vegetarian? I go, no. He goes, oh man, you got to be a vegetarian. I'm like, okay. So these were big wake ups for me. Like, I'm in. So, I tell my dad, quitting school, I'm going to Mexico. I'm going to go travel and see the world. I don't like school. That didn't go over well at all. Vegetarian again, that was like bird food, and off I go for 4 months traveling in mainland Mexico. Incredible adventure, best thing ever happened to me. And I realized that there's another world that wasn't school, and I loved it. Living outside, living on beaches, living on fruit, and just fish from the sea. It was amazing, especially back in the early 70s. It was quite amazing. When I came back, it's like I came back to the same old world, though, that wanted me to do the same thing. Again, I'm using myself as an example of how one becomes ignorant and how one works themselves out of it. And so I had to get a job, of course, to navigate through the world. And so I became a busboy at a local beachside restaurant in Southern California. And after being there for a couple weeks, I was okay. It's like I'm still grooving from my Mexico trip. I met this woman that worked at a local shop, and we had some great conversations. She was wearing a turban, I didn't know why, and it turns out she was a Kundalini yoga teacher. So I thought she invited me to a class at her house. It was just me and her, and so I did it, and it was like, wow, that was amazing. And then I went to hear a talk by her teacher, and then 2 weeks later, she goes, you want to hitchhike with me and my husband to New Mexico for a 10-day retreat, all in silence. We hitchhiked so I'm going, okay. So I tell my dad, I'm going to New Mexico. I'm 19 now, or 18. And I'm going to go do this course. Like, he's sort of given up, like I wasn't the sporto that he thought I should be. So off to New Mexico, hitchhiking. Oh, first night we spent in an abandoned date orchard that some hippie had took over, and we slept on the roof out in the Palm Desert somewhere in June. Then we went to Arizona. We fasted for 4 days in Oak Creek Canyon. I'd never fasted before. And in preparation for this 10 days that we were going to do in the mountains of New Mexico. Again, I don't know what I was getting into. And next thing I know, we stopped at an ashram in Phoenix. Now, an ashram is a place, if you're not familiar, where a group of people live doing spiritual practice, yoga, etc. There's various kinds of them. And so I spent a couple nights there, and oh my God, what a wake up that was. There's like 60 people living in this place, all eating breakfast and dinner together and preparing for their teacher to come and all preparing to go to this 10-day thing in the mountains. So from there, got in a ride with people, and we went to Jemez Springs in the mountains of New Mexico. And for 10 days with 1,000 people, I got up at 3:30 in the morning, did Kundalini yoga, chanting. All these things are pretty new to me. Chanting, Tantra yoga, silence, no talking, and it affected me profoundly. I mean, if you do something intensely like that, things come up. You have profound realizations and experiences. That getting up at 3:30 in the morning for one thing, being around 1,000 people, eating beans and rice breakfast and dinner, with a couple oranges and a couple bananas or a wedge of lettuce. I mean, this was the meal for 10 days. So lost weight, but I decided to become a yoga teacher because they were offering courses. So I said, I'm going to become a yoga teacher. I don't even know what was involved, but whatever this is, whatever this thing is, I want to share it with people. And this is a natural inclination. When you find something that works, you want to share it. After that, I went home for briefly. Again, my dad's now in almost a constant state of like, what in the hell is he doing? I'm moving to an ashram in San Francisco Bay Area in San Rafael for a 40-day teacher's training course in Kundalini yoga. And he's like going, okay, what's he going to do? He goes, I was kind of disappointing him at that point, but I was so excited. So moved to the Bay Area, to San Rafael, and I moved into a house with 74 people, I believe. The day I moved into this ashram, I just before there, I met some friends in Berkeley that I had met in mainland Mexico. We smoked some joints, drank some wine, and I went directly from Berkeley to San Rafael ashram, came in the front door with my amplifier, guitar, and a backpack. And I went in, and all of a sudden they're having introductions. So 70-some people, all in white, except me. I had a Hawaiian shirt on, tan, blah, blah, blah. They're all in white, and I'm going, oh my God, what am I getting into? So after introductions and everything, I, did this 40-day course. And during that time, I became the head cook at this ashram, and I'd already pretty familiar, and I was a decent cook. And I started thinking of cooking in a very different way when you prepare food for that many people. And because what the general teaching is that food is a prasad, which means prasad is like blessed food, a blessed sustenance that nurtures not just your body but your mind. So whatever the state of the mind of the cook, chef, whatever, that will be the energy in the food. And so from that point, I started thinking of food and the preparing of food in a very different way. Because what I started to see was that these raw ingredients, you could become any number of things. And the raw ingredients of my life, as the same, could become whatever I made it. And you begin to see that all things and their processes are very similar. They're only distinct. They're distinct like we are as individuals, but they're distinct in their ingredients, but the process is the same. And when I started seeing that, it made sense that, what the teachings of yoga do is break down the idea that things are separate, and they lead to this core feeling, this source feeling of where all things emanate from, and that we all share. Now, how to get that across, that idea That's the teaching. That's the yoga teaching. In reality, yoga is always taught in the moment, in the present moment. And when you come to the present moment, you realize that everything emanates from that, even reflections on your past, reflections on what your future could be. It's all being done present time. So the emphasis on present moment and presence in the teachings of all spiritual traditions all require this concentration of energy and focus in the moment. Now, when we take that into consideration, now the other element in this, in Kundalini Yoga and yoga in general, is that there is a sun energy and a moon energy, a male, a female energy, a dark and a light. And what we're doing in the yoga practice, in order to get this energy, this unconscious or this sleeping energy or unconscious, subconscious energy to awaken, what we're doing is we are bringing those two polar opposites, the yin and yang, and we're focusing it together. When we put it together and direct it where we want it to go, it turns on the inner light. The enlightenment takes place. When that enlightenment takes place, you see. When you see, it's revealed to you your relationship with everything. So it's not that there's a set way of doing any of this. There's your way of doing this. And it's your unique stamp, your unique place in all of this that is the doorway to who you are in relationship to everything. Now, people go, what, how, you come up with questions, because as soon as you begin to approach this door of self, there's guardians that don't want you to know. Those are habitual thoughts that, if you know who you are, they don't hold you in thrall. They don't keep you from seeing the reality. That's why, again, this motion of bringing the opposites together and looking through the lens of us. If you want to change the world, change how you see it. If you want to change the world, change how you see it. Because the way we see the world, if we look through the lens of division, better, less than, blame and be lame, in order to do this, we have to accept full responsibility for our ability to respond. If we think someone else is making us feel a certain way, you can know for sure that they might influence you because you have a shared dynamic, but you or myself are responsible for how we feel. It doesn't matter what goes on in the world. If we return, again, reclaiming our attention, we're giving light to these things. The perfect example of what is going on in the world now, this so-called division. Hold on. The greatest teachings of yoga, spirituality, etc., have happened in this divide. And the reason that is because the polarities are opening this field, and the temptation to go to one side or the other is huge. Because you can get support. Oh, you should do this. Definitely do this. You can join with a group of people that are way into doing that. Or you can find support on this side of going, we're not doing that. we're doing this. Now, you as a person, no doubt, know many people on both sides. And thence you feel divided because you love those people. There's a story that a lot of the yoga teachings come from this story of the Bhagavad Gita. If you're not familiar with the Bhagavad Gita, it's the essence of the Hindu spiritual thought. It's the very essence of the Mahabharata. It's the Great War. Now, you can say, and rightly so, that even though it happened 5,000 years ago, that it's because it's a metaphor for something that's a constant, it's happening right now. There is a great war, but the war is an inner war that if we go to the center, it's like being in the middle of the storm. And then this if we sit in the middle of this, between the two so-called factions, we realize that they come from the same source. So our responsibility is to track our own being to our source and not be pulled away by this this divisive thinking. It just, in a way, it simply means that if you go too far to your left or you go too far to your right, where are you leaving? The center. If you do that, you will feel stress. The farther you get from your center is the more stress you'll feel. So, if you want to do something for your health, your immune system, to be centered, to be calm, to learn how to be calm yourself. Now, these are all in the teachings of yoga. And we are in a different time, so the teachings and the need for them, for this yoga and community, has arisen to another way of approaching it. So that yoga just meaning unity, and the different methods are its expressions. So what does that mean for us as an individual when I say a recipe for enlightenment? It means at this time, with these pressures on both sides of us, is we let that pressure pull us to the middle. Instead of it expanding away from source, we pull together this energy and focus it where we want it to go. If you get in opposition, you'll feel a pointed sense of either righteousness or vindictiveness, or you'll feel the opposites. You go back and forth. They shouldn't do this. We should do that. That. Now, if you take it into the middle, now this is the exercise. When I say yoga and community, this is the stretch we are making now. If we want to see a sustainable world, if we want to be co-creators of this sustainable world, it behooves us to learn this simple exercise. It goes something like this. We reclaim our attention. We bring our attention from the outside world and its divisiveness, and we bring it to center. Now, we're using our breath to do that. I get out of sorts. This is what I do. Bring attention back. Breathe in the center. Withdraw the attention from the things that divide us, and the thoughts of how we're connected start coming to us, and we focus that attention inwardly, and what we find is all of a sudden start feeling more calm, and what is revealed to us as we stay with that, as we concentrate our energy into what we want, We withdraw from the world that is divisive and shows us what we don't want. The power of what we don't want is great, but the source of that power is far greater, which is our own self, our own being, which we share. We are all facets of this beautiful gem. There's many ways to look at it, and your way will be the right way for you. And so the trick is doing it. What does the doing involve? Again, this process is the same process in a yoga practice. As an individual, you're withdrawing your mind from the senses, you're focusing inwardly, you stay with that, and after a little while, it becomes concentrated energy, and as you concentrate in this middle place, it becomes meditation. Meditation, after a while, this being in the middle of yourself, becomes absorption. You become absorbed into, you stop dividing yourself. You cease, it stops happening. And in that space of stillness, your inner voice comes and reveals to you your individual recipe for enlightenment, your way of connecting. Because as you've withdrawn from the world and gone inward, you see your pathway towards your center. And the more you do that, the more you do it. It sounds strange, but the more you do it, the easier it is. Like my teacher had said, well, it may be an effort getting the ball to the top of the hill, but when you roll it, it rolls down by itself on the other side. Now, he was explaining this sadhana, or this spiritual practice. And this person I'm talking about, his name was Baba Haridas. He was an Indian man, Indian sadhu, and that came to America in the late 60s, early 70s, and taught. He was a silent, he wrote on a chalkboard. And I would say that his influence on me was, in particular, when I would say, well, how do you do it? It's like everyone is asking him, well, you come with your individual problems. And his answer was always more sadhana. He would write on his chalkboard. Say, oh, Babaji, da-da-da-da-da. And he would say, more sadhana. Meaning, turn within you, go through this bit of struggle to let go of your erroneous notion of things. And as you let go of those things, your energy is freed up. That's the Kundalini energy. As you let go of these limiting self-images and beliefs and concepts, this sleeping electrical energy at the base of the spine rises up through the chakras, or the wheels, the psychic wheels in the body. These chakra just means wheel, an energy wheel. The first one is the earth chakra, so it's the most dense. So the Kundalini, or this electrical energy, lies sleeping within the solidness of the earth. Now, as it moves up, the second chakra is the water chakra, and it becomes more fluid. Everything, it starts movement. And it comes up to the next chakra, which is fire, at the navel point, into the heart chakra, the sense of feeling and empathy and compassion. It comes to the throat chakra and to the third eye. In the third eye, there's many ways one could look at this. It's the pineal gland has a location. For me, as I've understood it, it's the us, I. As an individual, we have a certain sense of how we see the world, but as we move into the community, we have a sense of us. And I know everyone feels that. If you go out to dinner with someone, it's like we're going out. we have this sense, and as it's been said in the past, that it said, Jesus said this, whenever two or more are gathered in my name, there I am. I am. Meaning that as individuals, we gather with the same purpose and intent. A light goes on in us how we are connected. When he says, gathered in my name, I am. Is it two or more? Yeah. I am. This is the collective shared I am. And what happens is when you this practice of yoga in community really means you're in this group of people that you call your community. You feel comfortable enough to be vulnerable. In order to do this sense of vulnerability is pretty deep, because, for example, when I go to teach a regular class, the online teaching is relatively new to me. I see the people. I see their attention moving this way and that way, or how present they are, and all this thing. Now, in order to address people where they are, we need to be vulnerable and sensitive to the collective. Everybody feels a little bit different. So when we are sharing in this feeling, there's a vulnerability, and in our community, we build this trust and support for each other. So I love this peace, love movement community, because this is what's changing the world. Not huge corporations or presidents or kings, forget that. Our attention, if we put our attention into the heart and soul of our community and stretch ourselves, make that the exercise. Normally we think of yoga as a practice you do on a mat, you do by yourself. What I'm saying is we're taking it off the mat and moving it into the community, and the stretches that we make, the opening of our heart that we make, this is the yoga in community. And you could say the most important asana or posture that we can make in this yoga community is the stretch between me and you and another. This vulnerable, this heart-opening sensation, and you know what I mean. It's like, it is a bit of a stretch, because you're taking that inner child of yours that has been covered up with all these things, and it's like two little kids holding hands again and going, I love you. And you're not afraid of being rejected. That's out of the picture. It's just, you see two little children, they could just love each other. And that is our real nature. So on the onset of this is uncovering ignorance. The root cause is we're going to, prior to all of these ideas about who and what we are, prior to all that is who we really are. And we came to this planet, to this place, to have these experiences. So we can become enlightened, become liberated from the need to be in such a dynamic polarity. We become liberated from that by sharing this. And it's funny, this is where art and music comes in to the equation. Poetry, art, music, because words kind of can steer you to a place where you're feeling yourself, and then the journey starts there or continues. And for me, again, this journey of my digital image, it's been very interesting. And I realized, for me personally, I don't feel done with whatever I came here to do. And I'm sure if you're seeing it, you're feeling an impulse, a spiritual impulse to connect with others, to understand what's really happening in the world, and to see it for what it really is. The only conspiracy there really is taking the unreal for the real. That's the only conspiracy. And co-conspirators are those that hold you to the unreal and feed the unreal about you and nurture it and then siphon off the energy, your own personal energy, for their use. Follow? So that's why if we reclaim our attention, we can work in the world. You're reclaiming your attention and your responsibility and focusing it where you want it to go. I think that's the prime thing I'm trying to get across, I feel compelled to, is that if you get caught up in the left and right of things, into being right, into in the polarity of things, you'll find it'll just bounce back and forth forever, and you'll be right and you'll be wrong, depending, right? But if you're in the middle and you hold both views, if you can hold both views and look deeply into it, you will see yourself. And you'll see yourself through the other person's eyes, and you'll develop empathy and compassion, because instead of just going, oh, they're wrong, they're just plain wrong, and I'm right. No, it's not about being right. It's about understanding that another person or others could have a very different view according to their upbringing, the impact from their lives, and all these things. And our attempt to do is to liberate ourselves from holding them in this place, because we don't want to be held to our upbringing, to those views. They're just raw ingredients. So we're taking those raw ingredients that life presents us with, and we're cooking up something good. So I'm going to share a song with you. I don't think there's more I can say. Okay. Okay. This recipe I'm going to share with you. How to make a family stew. You take everything you got, throw it all together in a great big pot. Add a little water when the fire gets hot. Throw in some love and stir it up a lot, stir it up. Oh, stir it up a lot. Throw in some love and stir it up a lot, stir it up. Oh, stir it up a lot. Throw in some love and stir it up a lot. Take your past and your history too. Hey, we're making this family stew. Will you take everything you got, throw it all together in a great big pot? Add a little water when the fire gets hot. Throw in some love and stir it up a lot, stir it up. Oh, stir it up a lot. Throw in some love and stir it up a lot, stir it up. Oh, stir it up a lot. We're throwing some love and stir it up a lot. Hey. So, that has become my personal, again, it's my recipe for enlightenment. I realize that songs for me, and they come to me in a stillness when I'm not, the mind isn't running around like crazy. They come as a guidance. So I believe a teaching is, again, be still, and you'll hear your own inner guidance, and it's literally the tip of your paintbrush or the tip of your pen or where your fingers string or your vocal cords start vibrating with the air. And this self expression, as we remove the beliefs of our culture and our upbringing, as we remove those, this energy rises up in us and it needs to express. It expresses through creativity. So, peace, love, music, movement. Love this group. Love you all, whoever sees this. Hope you like it. Share it. Enjoy it. Spread the joy. We're in a grassroots movement here, and it's all about sharing and supporting each other in it. And I wish you all the best, and I will see you soon. Namaste. Hasta la vista.